Nice. So
All
we're
right,
live.
we are live now, Adolfo. Hi, everyone. It's Richard Wilmore. I'm here with Adolfo, who is one of our writers in residence, and we've been sharing videos of Adolfo all hour long, and we thought we'd jump here on live and talk about one of the really cool, innovative things that Adolfo has been doing in the hospital. Um, Adolfo, tell us about these things. I've got some pictures, and then you're going to kind of walk us through it. But how did you come up with this idea or find this idea, and how are you interacting with the patients, and what are you hearing from them?
Um, I guess it what all begins with the fact that I've always been fascinated with art from a young age, um, and I've been just kind of always been very curious about exploring those materials. Uh, and so when I recently discovered um, Erasure poetry, I kind of started using that as a basis for a creative outlet when it comes to like writing. And so I think maybe earlier, or I started the Learning Design Technology program at UTSA, and so we started learning a little bit more about artificial intelligence. So I started trying to think of ways that I could integrate that into the Eraser poetry activities. And so I think it's so far it's been very exciting to try something like a new approach like that. And I usually ask patients if they're okay with trying something new, and they're usually open to it. And so it's been very exciting to be able to use traditional methods um, with a little bit of technology or AI in it.
And I want to show some of the photos that you've been taking of some of it.
Sure.
So can you kind of, I know you're going to show us more, but like
Yeah.
how long does it take to get to this end product of, and this looks so random, but I'm sure it's
Yeah.
not
So
completely random.
so those are just some of the like work from some of the patients, and those are kind of like the earlier stages of it. And this one, at first, it can appear a little bit messy, but again, we're just playing with the material. So
Yeah.
in this particular case, they were kind of like experimenting with acrylic paint. I had one patient here who mentioned working with like or living near water, so they decided to add their own little touch, kind of like the wave texture to it. On that last one, that was actually this week. Um, I was getting to know the patient. They were having a hard time. They're at the hospital, and so but one of the characters that they really enjoyed was Stitch from Lilo and Stitch, and so we moved forward with the assignment, uh, or the activity. And one of the things that the patient mentioned was that their favorite food was pizza. And while I was there, the patient's partner was on their way to go buy pizza. And so I kind of took a look at what, kind of like all the, their story and kind of the things that they liked. And so I figured, what if I draw a picture of Stitch eating a slice of pizza? And, the patient was like, I'm not really good at drawing. And I said, don't worry about it. It's okay. I can, we'll kind of collaborate with this activity where I'll draw the Stitch and you can color and Stitch with in that page of the book. But the way it works is it's essentially, I mean, eraser poetry is a pretty straightforward activity. You just find a book and find a random page, you rip out the page, and you're essentially creating poetry out of the text that is already present there. Now, all the remaining unselected text needs to be blocked out. You can be as simple as simply going in there and blocking out using a Sharpie or a pen. Um, but one of the things that I like to do is, kind of again being playful with the material and integrating art on top of that to block out the rest of the text. So, um, if you'd like, I can share my screen and kind of talk a little bit more about the process. That I use three methods for creating this. And we can move on to the next slide. That's a little bit more about me. I'm from a small town in Rio Bravo, Texas. As I mentioned previously, or actually, no, I don't think I mentioned it, but in 2016, I graduated from the University of Texas, or UTSA, with a bachelor's degree in art. Um, and I focus a lot on sculpture and photography. But earlier this year, I enrolled actually in 2021, I enrolled, and I'm now learning in the Learning Design Technology program. Anyways, once again, the Erasure poetry, as I mentioned, is just creating poetry out of existing text in a page of a book or magazine or newspaper. And that's an example there. So there are three ways that I like to approach this activity. The first one is through significance, and that's where you look at the existing text that's already there and you circle the words that are meaningful or significant. And in this particular case, that's one of my examples. I went down the page and I selected the words that I thought were significant for me. And this is also the easiest approach of the three. We can move on to the next one, the next approach. This is option 2, and this is where you create poetry out of the existing text there. And in this example on the right, you can see I kind of created a short little poem. And it goes something like, it was early, 11:07 a.m., tossed and turned, confused and disoriented, a jigsaw puzzle. That was the longest night of my life. And again, this is the first step. It's about selecting the words that, or being creative with the words that are there. The next step would be to block out the text, but we'll take a look at that in the next slide. This is the third approach, and this is the approach that I believe takes the longest, only because you're trying to satisfy the requirements for a haiku. And a haiku it's a Japanese way of creating a short poem using a total of 17 syllables. And it is also composed of 3 lines. So there'll be 5 syllables on the first line, 7 syllables on the second line, and then 5 syllables on the third line. And the image on the right is the one that I created using another just random page of a book. And so the materials that are needed for this Erasure poetry activity, it's pretty straightforward. You just need, as I mentioned, an old book, a random book, a book that you're not using. It could be newspaper or it could be a magazine. If you are going to use a magazine, it may be difficult to try to use coloring pencils on there because of the waxy material that's on it, but you can still make it work using like Sharpies or other kinds of markers. You're going to need colors, colored pencils, markers, paint again, and of course a writing tool, pencil, pen. If you want to push this activity a little bit further and be a little bit more creative with it, you could use construction paper, a little X-Acto or cutting knife, cardboard, scissors, and glue. And I'll show you an example. Step 1 is to, as I mentioned previously, you circle the words that are meaningful to you. In the example on the right, I decided to go with the easiest approach, which is just simply circling the words that are significant to me. And then the first step is to begin drawing on the page. Now, if you can't think of a way, you can't think of something creative to draw over it, as I mentioned previously, I have been integrating the use of AI, more specifically DALL-E, which is an artificial system that generates images using text. And the image there on the bottom that you can see, that's one of the images that DALL-E generated, which I then transferred over to the page. So you see a sunset and a flower floating on water. And so, again, the first step is to transfer a drawing or just a random abstract drawing onto the page, doing the best to avoid those selected words. The second step is applying color to the drawing that you've made so that it can act as a way to block out the text that you haven't selected. And in my example, I used colored pencils to kind of first, color in the sunset, the water, and the sun rays, and the flower there. And then I also kind of went back in there with the felt pen to kind of outline the images that I've drawn, so the flower. And then I got a little bit creative with the bottom of the flower where the water would be. I just kind of, just a random lines. And then, so that's at that point, once you do that, you're essentially done. But if you do have time left over, you can push this activity a little bit further by playing with texture and just kind of space. So in this example, what I decided to do was, I don't know if you can see there on the edges, but I cut out the corners. In addition to that, I cut out one of the clouds and I glued it onto a different colored paper. And then on the back of that pink kind of paper that I use, I glued little pieces of cardboard to kind of lift the image, to play with texture and shadow. Another thing that I also did was, if you take a look at the sun ray and the sun, I cut out some of the existing page, um, and that blue backing that I added, so that when you do go back in there and you glue it onto like an additional kind of like white surface, like once you're ready to frame it, you then create more space and more shadow, more texture. So again, it's just being playful with the material. And yeah, again, it's a pretty straightforward activity. Usually takes anywhere from like an hour to an hour and 30 minutes, depending on the approach that you use. So like I said, the haiku approach, which is the third one, that one can take anywhere from like 10 to 15 minutes as you're trying to count all the syllables and trying to form those three lines. But yeah, all the patients that I've worked with have really very much enjoyed the activity. In addition to working on the activity, one of the things I do like to do is um, ask them some creative questions out of a creative book that I have, and as a way to choose a random page of a book, I'll use some dice that are 20 sides, and I'll give them like four of those, and they'll roll them onto like their table. We'll sum up the numbers, and then we'll use that number as the random page of the book, and we'll use that as conversation to get to know each other, or I'll get to know them a little bit more. Yeah, and I'll play the music too in the background.
I love how you can either make it very simple or you can get really elaborate with it, where you can draw and add texture and just keep adding and adding. It's like its own piece of artwork at the end of it if you want
Hmm.
to get that detailed, which is really cool. I love that you're mixing writing with art with music. I think that's a great way to kind of see what resonates with patients, like that's what I
Yeah.
love, that we offer different things so patients can find what they like.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, every patient is different. Some patients, for example, may be unable to hold a pencil or a pen or something like that, and it's never a problem for the activity, because I always offer to write for them, and then we can use that information to come up with like an image or a drawing. Um, Recently, for example, I had a patient who wanted to. I asked, I asked if it was okay, for example, for us to use that AI system for us to generate an image, and it would be based on the story that she was sharing. And she told me about this one time where, when she was younger, she created this like wreath out of found like branches, and eventually she gave that as a gift to somebody who was going to get married, which I think was it's very, very generous and kind of her. And so I figured, what if we take that, and we generate an image, and we that way she has like a visual kind of image of her story. And so using that AI system, we generated a wreath out of dried branches. She said she wanted burgundy and white roses, and then on the inside it would have clouds that formed the image of an angel. I don't know if I emailed you that one yet, but I can, and then you can share it on social media. But it is a beautiful image that was generated, and she very much appreciated that.
It's beautiful. And Adolfo made that PDF that we went through today. So if you're looking at it and you want it for your own record and to follow along, let us know and we can send that to you. Adolfo, thanks for hanging out with me.
Absolutely, Richard. Thank you so much
Thanks for all the work you're doing in the hospital.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be back in a couple hours, actually, with our director of philanthropy, our program coordinators, our surveyors to give everyone an update. So check back here at 4 p.m. Central, 4:30 Central, I think. And we'll see you later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.